Hey guys! Before we get started on the video, a quick disclaimer. First of all, there will be spoilers. When I do these theater reviews, I do often try to speak in at least semi-vague language about things. Like maybe I'll say, oh, I didn't like what he did, as opposed to actually spelling out what the thing is that he did that I didn't like. But it's still enough to imply things usually. So just a stated warning for that. Also, when I do these theater reviews, generally I'm making these a few days after I've seen the thing at most, after I've read the book, after I've seen the show, whatever. So what you're getting is my first impression opinions, generally, my initial thoughts on a character or on a plotline. And I know from past experience, honestly, my opinions change the more time I have to think about things. It's happened with movies, with characters in movies, in books, in, Marvel and Harry Potter and everything. I have a constantly evolving opinion, or I learn new information that makes me think differently on something, or I just, do the mental gymnastics of trying to figure out, maybe I don't understand why would they do that at some point, and then the more I think about it, the more I start to come up with alternate explanations or think, well, technically they never said this, maybe it was actually like that, and that changes my viewpoint on things. Even now, this being a little over a week since I saw the show, I can tell already that some of my thoughts on certain things are actually a little different than they were when I initially was doing this review. So, not everything is set in stone. That being said, please enjoy my review containing my initial thoughts and reactions to Something Rotten. Hey guys! So I went to see Something Rotten on tour. I like seeing shows on tour sometimes. You still get to see the show. It costs a lot less than going to see them actually on Broadway. I do obviously like to see them on Broadway when I can, to see it really just in the initial setting. If you can see it with the original cast, that's great, because they're the ones who've been there developing it for years, usually. But, I do like to see shows on tour. I saw Something Rotten on tour just a few days ago. The only problem I have with seeing shows on tour sometimes is that I don't get, a nice playbill for my playbill display, right? This is just a page in a book that says, State Theater on it, which is not super aesthetic. Anyway, here is what I thought about Something Rotten. Okay, so I didn't really know a lot about Something Rotten going into the show. I had seen the Tony's performance of a musical way back when that was happening, so I remembered, I always remembered that line about it's pronounced miserable, because that cracked me up. I had heard the God I Hate Shakespeare song because I went through a period a while back where I would just let Google Play stream a music playlist for me of Broadway songs. That's how I first started hearing songs from Waitress. I was like, oh, I really like these, So I knew the song from that, and I could tell the moment it started. I was like, oh, this must be from Something Rotten. A friend went to see Something Rotten a little while back on Broadway, and she told me the basic premise and plot of it about, the guy going to the Oracle and getting the idea to do Omelette instead of Hamlet, and that there were a lot of references to other musicals and such. Other than that, The only Ham for Ham that I ever saw live actually happens to be the one where they had the Something Rotten William Shakespeare come out and do his little thing where he was saying, "I'm Shakespeare and I'm very offended that Lin-Manuel Miranda keeps on stealing my shows," which is ironic now, having seen the show. And of course then there's that one reaction gif of Christian Borle like sauntering down the streets of New York City with his jacket thrown over his shoulder and the text, "Hard to be the bard," like superimposed over it, which I thought was hilarious. I actually did my nails before going to see this show. They say here, "Hard to be the bard." But I did not listen to the soundtrack in advance. I did not know anything about the whole love story with Nigel and Portia, or really anything about Nigel, except for what I heard of his lines in the God I Hate Shakespeare song, which I didn't realize that he was the second brother doing the show. When I heard that, I thought he was just some sort of little scullery maid boy who was like a little twink who had it really bad for Shakespeare, which I guess wasn't that far off of reality. I did not know about Nick and Shakespeare having this personal beef, but whatever. I mean, that really just helps make the plot more tight-knit, probably. The biggest thing, I think, if we're talking about expectation versus reality for me in this show, was definitely in the Shakespeare character. I came to this show ready to love Shakespeare. I thought he was so funny at that Ham for Ham, and like I said, I loved that "Hard to be the bard" gif. But I did not know about the whole plot line with Nigel and Shakespeare and Hamlet, and I didn't like that about him, like on a personal level. I appreciate how it ties into the story, but it's like, even though a lot of things about you are funny, I can't really like you now after what you did with this. And that was just like a little disappointing for me on a personal level, where I wanted to love him, but I can't condone his actions. Yeah. I loved all of the references to other shows and to Shakespeare works. I loved the modern feel, all the modern dancing and music, the way that they explained the future references so that there was actually a reason for them was actually a really unexpected little jewel for me. Like, I knew there were going to be references, but they made it actually kind of make sense to have them, which was great. The only thing knocking down the personal preference ranking of the humor of the show is that they do have a fair amount of sexual implication humor, which is not really my cup of tea. But I will say it was very well done, which is why the technical execution mark here is at the top, because it was delivered in this very humorous way where even someone like me who isn't really into that sort of humor most of the time could like chuckle at it every time it happened. So Nick was the main character, but honestly, I felt like he was really more the kind of character that works very well for fueling the story rather than being someone that I necessarily like as a person. I mean, I was kind of ambivalent about his general short-sightedness, the whole ambition is my folly thing. It's something we see all the time and it's vital to the plot, but it's never really an admirable trait. I wasn't really crazy about his whole need to feel like a man personality. I mean, I appreciated that the show, they consistently showed that his thinking there was wrong, and that B didn't take any of it, and that Nigel agreed with B, and that they showed B outclassing Nick, both in terms of sensibility and also in manly things like physical strength. But the fact that the show made sure to display that his way of thinking there was wrong doesn't really make me like it about him. Nigel, I loved him. Adorable, anxious little poet. He's true to his heart and he's unashamed of it. I love him so much. B, I love B. Wonderfully, extremely competent and resourceful, doesn't take any shit. I love her philosophy that marriage should be a partnership, because that's like what I believe about relationships too, even as someone who doesn't do them. I loved that she was always herself and she didn't ever play a part, be it the expectations for how she should act as a woman, or when she was actively in disguise as a man, she still was just herself. She's not one for the societal masks that we wear, and I love that about her. Shakespeare. I talked about Shakespeare already in the reality versus expectation section. His songs are funny. The way everyone talks about him is funny. The way that, every time he's on stage, they're all just like, Shakespeare! And his rock star vibe, the way that everyone was always fawning over him was hilarious. Just like, I love how he puts words in the wrong order. Oh my god, don't you love how he just says things that make no sense? But I hate that thing he did. It makes me feel like he actually is a bad person, like Nick was insisting the whole time, instead of something like both Nick and Nigel having clouded judgment and Shakespeare actually falling somewhere in between what they both thought of him is something that I think I personally would have preferred. I loved Portia. Portia, when she first appeared, I laughed at their very musical sort of meeting, that bumping into each other, then sitting down and staring at each other. My mind immediately went to Marius and Cosette specifically, actually, although I know it's a common thread amongst musicals in general. I did sort of go, oh, here we go, it's the love interest. I don't know why I didn't see this coming. It's a musical staple. Because we're used to that, right? Like the sort of locked in the tower love interest role who serves just to distract the boy, or his desire to chase his love motivates him to make new personal decisions, and the girl gets a song about loving the boy and wanting more than being sheltered. And it's musical Cosette, it's Joanna in Sweeney Todd, it's Maria in West Side Story. But then Portia was more active than that. She hunted down Nigel because she liked him, instead of just hoping he felt the same way and would come find her. She was all, I'm sick of star-crossed lover stories, let's change it. She got songs about being a huge dork rather than just about longing for that mysterious stranger from the marketplace. Even that bit at the end when she was all like, not without saying goodbye. Bye, Daddy. Like, she seems very much like that kind of person that would be like, my faith means that I love everybody, and I loved her. Overall, I loved the show. It was hilarious. A little bit of personal discontent with the ending, how Shakespeare just got away with being horrible. It's like they said themselves in the show, people love musicals for the fantasy of it. So in a comedy like this, you sort of want the jerk to get his just desserts. But overall, highly entertaining. I found that It's a Musical number so much funnier in context than I did when it was standalone at the Tonys all those years ago. That might just be a personal preference thing. I often prefer having context. I remember a friend showed me Agony from Into the Woods once, and I was just kind of like, okay. And then months later, I saw the show, Into the Woods, performed by our school, and I was like, this is so funny. And she was very much, you know, I showed you this ages ago and you had no reaction, which I do feel really bad about that because I know how much it sucks when it seems like someone doesn't like what you're showing them as much as you want them to. And also how annoying it is when then they seem to discover it later. But I promise you, Jeannie, I always remembered that you were the one who introduced me to Into the Woods. Even when I was going to go see it for the first time, I was like, oh, this is that show Jeannie recommended. I should watch it. I promise. Anyway, I'm digressing. Something Rotten was a scream. Even when I knew it was going to be all parody-like and filled with references and stuff when I was going in, I still spent the entire show just like highly, highly recommended. Hey guys! You may have noticed that the format of this video was a little different from my previous theater reviews. What do you think of this new review format? I'm trying to put together a more consistent sort of rubric for future reviews. So if there's anything that you think could be changed or added, let me know in the comments, and I'll see about making those changes in my little theater review scoring rubric going forward. Alright, that's it for today, guys. Bye!